Hello everyone, it's Saltyman here. Okay, so today we are going to be going over some character basics for Xenoblade Chronicles X. Now, this game can be very confusing at the start, so I will try to make this as simple as possible. I will explain all of these stats, but there's quite a few you should not need to worry about right away. So, the most important and foremost is health points. So this is obviously your health. That's how much damage you can take without dying. Now, a few things about your health though, you generally do not heal during combat. There's a few skills that can heal you, but you either have to defeat or run away from an enemy before you start healing again. Now, you also do get these soul voices. We'll talk about those a bit more later, but those are those reaction commands that come up, so those can heal you a bit. But you should not be relying on healing too much at the start. A lot of health points, though, can help you survive. That's one of the most important stats at the start. The stat next to it is almost useless at the start. This TP, that's actually tension points. Sorry. So, this is used to use certain arts or to activate overdrive. So this is auras or TP arts. I'll show those really quick actually. You should get some auras earlier in the game, but TP arts are fairly useless. So you can see these cost 1,000 tension. Some of these arts also cost the same. So you shouldn't have too much to start, and you probably won't be getting them anyway, so won't have to worry about that too much right now, but that is for certain abilities and certain mechanics later in the game. So, the other two most important ones obviously are your attack score. So, you can see you have your ranged attack and your melee attack, so that should be pretty self-explanatory. But then you have your total ranged attack and total melee attack and ranged attack and melee attack. So the main ones you want to focus on are the total ones. There shouldn't be a huge difference anyways, at least not on the one you're focusing in. But the total melee attack dictates your actual damage. So that's not only your auto attacks, but the damage done by your arts. Now, your auto attacks are not your main source of doing damage in this game. That's one important thing. There's quite a few interesting things like that in this game actually. We will go over how those work with arts in a bit. The next one is defense. So this is based entirely off of your armor. Now, this reduces damage by whatever your defense score is, but there is never a point in the game where it's actually meaningful. Like, it always reduces a negligible amount of damage. Sorry, I can't talk here. So, like, you can see with the amount of health I have, a lot of enemies kill me in one hit anyways, so reducing 168 damage is not going to do anything. It's the same thing when you're at lower levels actually. Like, even if you have 1,000 health, like, 50 armor is going to do nothing. So your resistances are much more important. Definitely health and physical resistance are the most important. But we will go over the other attributes too, because most of these as well you don't need early on. You can see you have ranged accuracy and melee accuracy. So you do actually have different accuracy scores. So most arts use one of these two. So if you're using a ranged weapon, it will mostly use ranged accuracy. But there's one interesting thing here. You'll probably get the skill early. There's a few like this. This is on the assault rifle, which obviously is a ranged weapon. But assault hammer is actually a melee skill. So there's a few exceptions to that rule. But most enemies earlier in the game do not have much evasion at all. But basically how the accuracy and evasion works is enemies will also have a set accuracy and evasion. So say your ranged accuracy is much higher than their evasion, you'll always hit them. If they're about even, you'll hit them most of the time. But if their evasion is higher, you'll miss them more often, and if it's much higher, you might miss them every single time. Say an enemy has 300 evasion, and you have 350 ranged accuracy, that's fine for hitting them with ranged attacks, but then you only have 250 melee accuracy, good luck hitting them with Assault Hammer. So, fortunately, you do not have to worry about evasion too much earlier in the game. Same as accuracy, most enemies do not have high evasion early. But just wanted to explain how those scores work. Now, ranged attack, melee attack, you shouldn't really worry about those. The difference is actually your weapon damage, so I'm not sure why there's two scores shown here. So, evasion we already kind of went over, but if you do have extremely high evasion, you can actually evade most, if not all, attacks from enemies. Now, potential. This is a funky attribute. I'm not even sure why this is in the game, but this increases the amount of health you get from soul voices, which is virtually useless. But this also dictates the damage you do from tension arts, so this is kind of like the double-edged thing, is that you don't have tension points early on, and when you do get tension arts, you might be like, oh wow, this has such good hit scaling, it's going to do a ton of damage, but no, it actually only scales with your weapon attack and potential. So any augments or effects you have that increase melee attack or ranged attack, that won't affect the tension arts. So until you start getting much potential, you probably don't want to be trying to use tension arts anyways, unless they have secondary effects, because you won't get much out of them. So by far the most important attributes are just health and attack. You need to be able to soak up hits and actually survive, and you need to be able to kill things fast. Now, we will go over the resistances. So, the two you'll be seeing earlier on the two on the top. So, physical is by far the most common. Pretty much every enemy has physical attacks, and those are kind of the hard-hitting ones. But you will start seeing some of the ganglion or mechanoid enemies with some more laser-type weapons. So that's more than likely beam damage, but that's not as common. But those are the two you'll probably see at the start. So, physical normally does a lot more damage and is more common anyways. So, most important is get a lot of physical resistance and health. Now, the way this resistance score works actually is kind of interesting. So, I'm not sure why defense is so useless, because 100 resistance is basically 100% resistance. So, say I had 100 beam resistance, beam damage would do nothing to me. But if I only had 100 beam resistance and someone lowered my beam resistance, I would start taking damage again. So you likely won't be reaching the cap earlier in the game, but there's a huge difference between, say, 50 physical resistance and 75%. So you'd be taking half as much damage. So yeah, you definitely do want to stack your physical resistance early on. Now, you can see I do have this negative gravity resistance. So most armor actually gives you negative gravity resistance, which isn't much of an issue because it's a very rare damage type. You normally only see that at higher levels and not too much anyways. So you probably won't have to worry about that too much at all, honestly. Ether is also rare, but you do see it at higher levels. Now, thermal and electric, you'll see more at medium levels. So, it's more the physical and beam you'll see early on. You will start seeing some weapons or some arts of your own that do thermal or electric damage, but enemies also have their attributes set up like this, so they'll have their own resistances. So certain weapons or certain arts can be a lot more effective. Also, certain skills only increase certain attribute damage. So it might be like 25% extra physical damage. So your weapon will have an attribute. and certain arts will have forced attributes. I will go over everything else more in detail later, but I'll also explain how your attributes affect everything. Earlier on, for your skills and arts as well, you want more defensive ones because most of your attack power actually comes from effects and your weapon itself. So you can see these have a lot of effects that increase my damage then. Most of your defensive stuff, that comes more from armor. But buffs also play a large part of it, and classes can also affect it, and obviously your level does play a large part on your skill, or on your attributes, sorry. So a lot of augments and effects also are affected by your base stats. So basically if you don't have much base attributes, you won't get much out of extra effects or skills. So some of these actually add, and some of these are bonuses. You can see here I have this ranged attack up and ranged attack boost. So say ranged attack up would add 150, ranged attack boost adds 25%. So if you don't have any attributes to begin with, anything that boosts stats obviously is not going to give too much. Same thing with skills. So you can see this boosts my ranged attack by 30%. But earlier on, the ones you're going to want more are ones that increase either health or anything defensive. Because the attack skills do not give too much actually. They can at higher levels when they're fully leveled up, but and to level things up you just press X. It does cost some battle points, but it's one interesting thing about skills too. Different ones have different level up bonuses. Like some are a lot more valuable to level up early. Some give very little bonus. Like this one you can see, oops, this starts at boost critical by 40%. Then if you level it up, it's only 45. So some of it will actually double the effect from level 1. But you shouldn't have to be too careful with battle points right away. So you can level up a few kind of skills that or increase your health or defensive properties. You should be good to go there. Now, arts are a bit interesting. I will go over all the different types later, but basically these yellow ones are your ranged attack arts, and your brown ones are your melee attack arts. So you can see this hit scaling. For these ones, that scales with your total ranged attack or total melee attack, but then for these tension arts, this only scales with your weapon damage and potential, so those ones are a bit funny. That's why earlier in the game you definitely want to focus on total attack, because most of your arts will be non-TP arts, so that will really dictate your damage. Now, these buffs can have some interesting effects, but some of these can increase your health, or your damage, or your resistances. So again, these buffs are much more valuable if you have higher base attributes to support them. These are, the purple ones are debuffs, so these can have some interesting effects. A lot of these can also have disable effects, but the most important one early on is definitely topple. We will go over disables more later, but like I said before, healing in combat can be difficult, so disables on yourself and your squad can be a very useful thing for taking out tougher enemies, especially if it's a single enemy. If you have a lot of disables on your squad, you should be able to take them out without too much problem. Your squad mates are pretty dumb, to be honest, so that's why you're going to want quite a bit of health and resistances so you can kind of soak up some hits. But if you're taking a bit too much damage, you can also kind of run out of the way and let your teammates take some hits as well. So hopefully that does help. We will go over everything else later. Some of you may have already started changing your class, but you can see different classes also give different bonuses to attributes at the cost of less skill slots. So these later classes actually give more skill slots and a lot more bonuses to attributes. So Drifter's not always the best, and when you don't have a lot of skills leveled up, a lot of the times the attributes are worth more anyways. So should be looking more at the actual arts you want, but also keep in mind how these affect your attributes and how that affects any skills or augments you have, which we'll talk more on later. Attributes do affect pretty much everything about your character. If you're wasting them in the wrong area early on, it can definitely hold your character back. So hopefully this helped anyone who's having a bit of trouble picking up the game, because I know I was quite confused at the start. I was putting like potential and things that weren't helping at all, and I definitely was dying a lot, and then I eventually kind of realized I just need physical resistance and health, and that got me through most of the game without too much problem. So it's much later in the game where you need more specific resistances. So you don't need to worry about too much of it right now. I just wanted to explain everything and help clear it up. Hopefully this helps, and I'll see you guys soon. We'll go over everything else in more detail. Thanks for watching.